Hopefully you guys are excited about this topic like I am and like Yolanda is. Let me know in the chat if this was the topic that you voted for, because over 50% of you guys did. So it seems like a pretty clear route to go. I'm stoked. Let's go ahead and dive in. So I am going to actually start us out. So this is the first, so like I said, there's kind of 5 real steps that you need to complete. A lot of it being pre-work, so things not on this page, the workflows page or the automations page, that need to be done in the HoneyBook system in order for this to, before you even get to this page, basically. So there's 5 steps in order to get the workflow running, and 3 of those are not on this page. So I'm going to start us at the beginning and kind of walk us through everything that needs to be done beforehand before you get to this page. And then by the time you get to this page, you'll already have a bunch of stuff set up. So this work actually should only take you like 5 minutes by the time you get here, rather than having to start here and then backtrack and figure out where all the nuances of this thing live. So I'm going to start us at step number 1. We're going to keep things super simple and then just work our way through. And I'll be sure to instruct you guys of when we're moving on to the next step. And by the way, all of this will be laid out in the notes that I'll be posting at the bottom of the screen towards the end of the webinar. And it'll also be in the email that I'm sending to you guys. So if you are note takers, feel free to follow along. But otherwise, you can just look forward to getting my notes later today. Alrighty, let's dive in. So I am starting us out. Stop number 1, let me max this out on my page. Stop number 1, ironically or confusingly, is actually the company settings. So you come up to your profile picture and you come to company settings, and you're going to start off in the preferences tab. Okay, maybe some of you know where I'm going. Maybe some of you are like, what the heck is going on? We're going to get there. Okay, we're going to get there together. I promise you, by the time you leave here today, you are going to be able to teach a class on this yourself. So let's get going. We've got our project types here. Okay, so project types, unusually enough, play a huge role in being able to get the right content to the right people using the workflows and automations tool. Okay, so project types in HoneyBook, if you're not familiar with them, are basically ways that you can categorize your work. So this could be distinguishing between a set of products that you sell, like an online course or a branding kit, versus the packages that you offer more for like your service focusings, or different types of clients that you take on. So different locations that you service, or different brackets of clients that you service. So I want to encourage all of you guys to think really creatively about how these project types apply to your business. So this is just an example of what I have set up in this demo account for this kind of branding designer client that I'm working with. Okay, so they've got corporate clients that they work with. They do logo design. They have a web design silver package. They have a web design gold package. They also sell online courses. They have graphic design, and they also sell branding kits. Okay, so they've broken this down this way. When I say they, I've done this. This is my demo account, but I set this up so that we can see how products play in here. So like if you're selling evergreen products, we did a webinar on this, I think it was just last week, about how to sell products through HoneyBook and build evergreen content that you can sell online, and how you can use HoneyBook to do that. So tune into that on our YouTube channel if that interests you. But you can sell products here, you can sell services, you can distinguish who your clients are, the different packages you offer, whatever makes the most sense for your business. So to give an example, I was working with a client a couple weeks ago, and she is a dog walker, and she services 3 different cities, and each of those cities has 4 different packages. So you can have up to 17 custom project types here. So what we did was we said, you know, let's say San Jose, San Francisco, and the East Bay were the 3 kind of neighborhoods that she serviced. But each of those neighborhoods had their own option of those 4 packages. So what she did was San Jose Gold, San Jose Bronze, San Jose Silver, San Jose Platinum, or whatever the package names were. And then she did the same thing for San Francisco and the same thing for the East Bay. And those were her project types. So then when she was going to either set up a workflow or even just look at her project pipeline, she could easily filter to see who's who and who falls into what category of what she's working with. So that's a very straightforward example, but I feel like because it's so straightforward, it's really easy to then picture how it might work for your business. So that could just be, maybe you offer 17 packages. Fabulous. Maybe those are your project types. Maybe you offer 3 packages. So another example, just to kind of drive this home, I always give the example of photography just because I think it's really, again, easy to comprehend. So if you're a photographer and you offer wedding photography, elopement photography, family shoots, senior shoots, and those are your different categories, those would be your project types. But let's say you're only a wedding photographer. You only shoot weddings. So maybe you've got elopements, engagements, your bronze package, your gold package, your silver package, and then maybe some additional add-ons or something. Like maybe those are your project types. So depending on your niche and your focus area and how you like to categorize your clients and distinguish between those different things, that's how you'll want to approach project types. And maybe it's even a combination of those things, right? Like how I have here, I've got some products that I'm selling. I've got my different package offerings. And I've got, different types of clients that I take on. So graphic design client, maybe I have 16 packages within my graphic design realm of services that I offer, but listing all those out wouldn't quite make sense. It's just important for me to know that they're a graphic design client versus a logo design client or something like that. So you can combine all these different kind of, instructions of how I'm describing this to best fit whatever your business model is. And then based off of these things here, you'll be able to tell HoneyBook, all my graphic design people, I want to receive this set of messages or this kind of nurture sequence of files and follow-ups and communication from me. Or you can say, I want graphic design and logo design to all receive the same. Okay, so I'm kind of giving you guys a glimpse into like step 5. Once we get all this done, we're at step 1 right now, but once we get down to step 5, you'll be able to see how these project types come into play for getting the right information to the right people at the right time. Okay, that's the whole point of what we're going to be focusing on with workflows and automations, is giving very tailored communication to your clients while still, this is important, this is the biggest hang up that I hear from my clients as they're getting excited or as they're, considering implementing automations and workflows for their business, they start to feel like they're going to have some robotic sequence of messaging go out. Okay. So that is not the case with workflows at all. You, if you choose, can still have complete controls over what your client receives and when they receive it. We'll get into that a little bit later. I might be getting a little ahead of myself on that, but I just wanted to put that out sooner rather than later for you guys, just to know workflows doesn't necessarily mean you're completely hands off the wheel. Okay. If you don't want it to be that way, maybe you want the first 3 steps to be that way, but then everything after that, you want to have control over what it says and when it goes out. That's totally fine. You can still do that in workflows. Okay. So let that be a little teaser to you as we start to continue on here. Okay, I feel like that's enough on project types. Hopefully that all makes sense to you guys. If you have any questions about project types or how it might work for your specific business, feel free to drop a question for me and I'll save it for the end and we can circle back to it. But for now, I'm going to move on from project types. But just to recap, that would be step number 1. So you're coming into your company settings, you're popping down to preferences, and you're customizing these project types here to reflect what you offer for your business and how you like to categorize the different types of clients that you work with, or any other category of how you like to work with your clients. Okay, from here, I'm going to take us into step 2. So step 1 is setting up your project types. Step 2 is we're going to stop at the contact form. Now, this step you can omit if you'd like, but you need to know that it exists because it's how the project types tie in. So There are a couple different ways that you can add workflows to a project. If you want a workflow to be added to a project automatically, you'll want to go the project route contact form, the project type contact form route rather, that will automatically have the workflow trigger, have the workflow start to be applied, have the workflow start to send out to your client. So that's like a very sequential automatic nurture, so that you're not having to say, oh, shoot, I forgot to apply the workflow to my new inquiry. So this is very specific for new inquiries if you're really wanting to follow up with them, or if you know there's part of your process that you like to automate for certain types of clients. So again, for like graphic design clients, if you like for all of them to have a series of, files or emails or nurturing communication at any point in your process, project type to contact form. Basically, this is just the best way to fully automate your process. So if that's something you're really interested in, you're definitely going to want to include this step. So I'm just going to go through and show you the options, but ultimately the choice is yours on how you do this. There are multiple different kind of routes you can take to automate your process, whether that be automating it from the very beginning, from the time a contact form is submitted, automating that later down the road once payment is submitted, completely automating all of the steps, automating some of the steps and leaving some to be a little bit more under your control where you get to approve it before it sends out. So there are a lot of different ways that you can go about it, which ultimately is a good thing, because that means that you have more control and you have more say over your client's journey with you. So just bear all of this in mind. My plan is to give you guys the ammo that you need to make the right choice for your business, which is why I say if you have specific business use case questions, or if you have something in mind that you'd like me to dive into a little bit later, throw that in the question, throw that in the chat, and we'll hopefully have time to get to it in the last 10 minutes. Okay, so like I said, stop 1, set up your project type. Stop 2 is going to be the contact form. Okay, so there are 2 ways to add the project type to the contact form. So now that you've got your categories of work or packages or services set up as project types, you're going to attach that information to the contact form. So there are 2 different options when attaching it to the contact form, okay? The first option is adding the project type suggested question. So the way you would make sure you do that, there's a couple ways you can check it out. So you can hover and look for the 2 little circles to see what a smart field is attached to, basically. So we've got lead source and project type here, but the easiest way to do it is really just to come in, click the plus button. It defaults to drop you off in custom questions, but you'll want to click suggested. And then once you're here, you can see that the project type question here is already added to your contact form. So that means you can ask this question of your clients to say, what types of services are you interested in? Or, depending on how you have your project types laid out in that list that we just created, that will, inform how you decide to word this question. What types of services are you interested? Or what package are you interested in booking with us? Or, what location are you interested in booking with? Or whatever it might be. So allow the project type list that you just created to inform how you word this question when you add it to the contact form. And then your clients will have the ability to select from the drop down. So we can see the list of project types that we just edited is here. And there's no way to edit this list in the contact form natively, which is why I started us out in project types. You build the project types first, then you come into contact form and you add the project type question. And now our list is already there. So we already know this list reflects what we offer and who we offer it to. And we already like it because we already customized it in the project type area. And now we're adding it to our contact form so our clients can let us know what they're interested in receiving. And this will ultimately, eventually trigger the automation or workflow based off of what they select here, if that's how you decide to set it up. Okay, I know this is tough to talk through from a high level perspective, because ultimately it is a very tailored, business focused decision that you'll make about what works for your specific process. But again, my goal is to give you guys the ammunition and the tools that you need to make the correct decision for what you need for your business. Okay, so you can add the project type question to your contact form. So remember, I said there's 2 different ways you can add project types to the contact form. The first of which is this question here. Now, if it feels strange or uncomfortable or doesn't really make sense to ask this question of your clients, you don't have to have it asked of them. What you can do instead is you can come up here to the settings and you can assign a project type to this specific contact form. So what I mean by this specific contact form is you can actually have multiple contact forms. So this is where we can get really creative. Again, maybe you have a contact form where you sell your online courses and you don't want to have your clients say, I'm interested in online courses, because they're already on your online course landing page and it feels silly to ask that question again because it's just redundant. So you would actually remove the question from the contact form. This would be your online course contact form, for example. And then in your settings, you would assign the project type of online courses here. And that will do the same thing on the HoneyBook side, where HoneyBook will recognize, okay, anyone who fills out this form is going to be categorized as an online course and put into the online course workflow. Okay, so that's another way that you can distinguish who's who coming in from where. Okay, so you can have your clients tell you who they are, or you can say, I know who my client is based off of the fact that they're filling out this contact form, and I'm just going to assign the project type so they don't have to answer a redundant question or something like that. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. You can use multiple contact forms. You can have the question on there, or you can assign the project type. But ultimately, that project type is going to define who the client is and help trigger a specific workflow for them. Okay, so that's step 1, project types, step 2, contact form, and then, however you want to use that contact form. Step 3, we're going into actually building out your templates. So this part is probably going to be the most time consuming, because if you don't already have the templates built out for whatever workflow you want, you're going to have to kind of put on your copywriter hat, put on your branding kit hat for a second and sit down and really crank out that content so that the content lives in HoneyBook already, and then you can pull that content into the workflow. So you can't build the content into the workflow itself, which is, again, why I'm starting us. We're kind of backtracking into this tool, right? Because you can't just start in workflows. You got to set up your project types. You got to attach the project types to the contact form. Now you got to build all the content. And then that way, when you go to build the workflow, the content's already there. Boom, boom, boom. You say when it goes out, and then you're done. So that's why this part can be most time consuming. Again, just if you don't already have the content built out. If you already have brochures and questionnaires and email templates that you want to send to your clients, then hopefully it won't be too time consuming. But you might find you want to make a couple tweaks here and there, or create a completely new set of or series of communications with your clients. And this is where you would do that. So again, to tease to step 5, once we get there, workflows are basically comprised of 4 different options. Okay. The first is an internal task. So this is a reminder for yourself or your team. The second is an email template. The third is a questionnaire file. And the fourth is a brochure file. So when you are creating an internal task, obviously that's very simple. You just type it out, call the client, text the client, follow up with the client. Maybe it's a deliverable, finish the logo, finish the branding kit, whatever it is. It's just a reminder, a task for yourself with a due date so that you don't miss that step in your process. I've seen some companies that their entire workflow is just internal tasks because their team has a list of things they need to accomplish by the project date in HoneyBook. So they, Yolanda, I love it. Oh my gosh, I am going to send the notes, I promise, but I love it. So depending on your process, again, we can think creatively about this, right? We can have a workflow be an entire list of tasks for your team to complete by the time the project date comes around, or by a month before the project date, or whatever. We can determine those tasks and just list those things out as almost like an internal timeline for, to keep our, yourself or your team on task. So you can think really creatively here. Obviously, if you were looking at a list of internal tasks, maybe you wouldn't have to set up the contact form with the project types and build out all this content. You actually would be starting out in the workflows tool. But again, my goal is to show you guys, if you were going to do it, this kind of traditional route of saying project type influences the workflow that goes out based off of the inquiry that's submitted. How do I do that? That's where we're starting. Okay. So anyway, in the workflows, you can create tasks, emails, brochures, or questionnaires. So you need to build out those email templates, those questionnaire templates, and those brochure templates before you ever go to the workflows page, right? So to show you an example, this is one of the examples that we touched on in last week's webinar where we were talking about selling products in HoneyBook. So for example, you might have like 3 different modules. So module 1 is week 1, week 2, week 3, and it's kind of like a workbook for your client to go through on their own. Maybe you hyperlink a video in there. Maybe you have a series of questions for them to answer for themselves. Once it loads here, y'all, my computer sounds like it's about to take flight. We're working our way through. So this is an example. If you guys haven't spent much time in brochures, this was actually one of the other topics that you noticed we had the option to go through today. So I do kind of want to maybe take 5 minutes here just to go through and explain the elements of the brochure, because brochure is one of the more powerful file types you can use in HoneyBook. And it comes into play when you're setting up workflows for your business. So if you're someone who really wants to put, visual aids, if you want to incorporate visual aids into your selling process and your relationship building process with your clients, the brochure file can absolutely do that. We've done many webinars on this incredible file. So I highly recommend checking out our YouTube channel if you are interested in learning more about that. We've done many of them, but it's basically just a beautifully branded document that can convey information to your clients and collect information from your clients, put very simply. So like I mentioned, you could hyperlink to a video, for example. So you could add, a hyperlink to something if you wanted to do that. You can set clear actionable steps for them. So really using this document to set expectations with your clients. So this could be used as like a welcome packet, for example, so that everyone who fills out your contact form automatically with a workflow is getting a beautifully branded brochure welcome packet saying, can't wait to work with you. Here are client testimonials. Here's what to expect when you work with me. And by the way, here are the 3 different packages that I think would be a good fit for you. So there are a lot of ways that you can use this document to convey what you need to convey and collect information from your clients as well. So really quickly, just to show you guys, when you go to add information or add content to the brochure file, there are really 3 elements that you can add to the brochure file. The first of which is content, which we consider to be images and text. So you'll see there's a bunch of different formats for adding the image and text. So for this image here, for example, we created this in Canva, or I think this was a template that I actually used from one of our educators. So she created this image in Canva, and then we pulled it in to use it as like a banner image or something. Okay, so you can have text and images. The second component is questions. So again, you can collect information from your clients. So if you just wanted to use this as like a very beautifully branded questionnaire file, heck yeah, I totally recommend that. Like, it's a beautiful way to get information in front of your clients and to collect information from them as well. I personally think it's just a little bit more customizable and a little bit more robust than our existing questionnaire file, because not only can you ask questions of them, but you can also use it to kind of set next steps. You can have these branding elements in there and really kind of put your best foot forward. So this file could just be a questionnaire if you wanted it to be. It's just a matter of how you combine the different tools and actions to create that for your client's journey experience. Okay, so you've got content, text and images. You can ask questions of them, and you can display your services. So once you've got all your package templates built out, you can come in here to a brochure and list out all your different packages. You could say, I've got my brand identity. You could add whatever options you want that are in your package area already. You can easily pull in your different package options here. Okay, so you can use the brochure file to allow your clients to select what services they're interested in. This is the final piece. So you could use this as a welcome packet. You could use this as a proofing document. You could use this as a way to sell your products like we were talking about. You could use this as a questionnaire. You could use this as a pricing guide. So you can allow your clients to select what services they are interested in. So when you add a service block to the brochure, you have the option to say your clients can select one item, they can select more than one item, they can even choose quantities. So this is really helpful. I have a lot of like makeup artists sometimes, and they need to know how many people they're going to be servicing. This is another way to do that. If you're selling products, you can say how many of these things do you want. So you can allow them to select quantities, select at least one, or at least one is required. So you can allow your clients to make selections here. So again, if we're thinking about the full big picture of what we're talking about today and how this comes into play when we are using workflows, maybe we set this up to be a pricing guide so that when my clients are inquiring through my contact form, they let me know what services they're interested in. And, they say, I'm interested in your logo design. Great. I have a logo design brochure built out that conveys client testimonials, asks them questions on what they're specifically looking for in their logo design. What do they already have, that they're working with in their business? And it displays my 4 different logo design packages or add-ons or a la carte options for my clients to select from. That would be amazing. And it automatically sends to them when they fill out that contact form and indicate that they're a logo design client. Okay, so I'm just trying to get your guys' gears turning here about how we can use this file in conjunction with the workflows tool to really give your clients an exceptional client experience and also to take some of that time off your plate. If you're someone who manually is sending a brochure every single time to your clients when they inquire, maybe let's automate that one step in your process at least just to start. Okay, so this is just one example of how you can set that up. And by the way, once your clients make selections in the brochure file, HoneyBook will take those selections and put it into a customized proposal for you. So it basically copies that information and pastes it into a proposal file so that your client selections are already in there. We don't send it to them. It'll just stay in a draft mode, but you can go in and you can edit whatever you need to edit before you send it off to them, but you'll have complete control over what they ultimately end up booking with you. But it's just going to save you that time so that you know exactly what the client is interested in and already pull that into the proposal file. So again, just saving you as much time as possible. Even if you don't end up sending a brochure in a workflow when you leave here today, maybe this will inspire you to just build out a brochure anyways. And if you are someone who voted for the brochure topic, this is your little bonus plug that I'm giving you, because setting up brochures wherever you need it in your process as a visual aid and a really compelling branded document to set clear, actionable next steps for your client, whether that be selecting the services they're interested in, completing a set of questions, whatever it might be, booking a consult call. You can use HoneyBook scheduling tool in here, you guys, because we already talked through how you can hyperlink, right? So maybe this link, instead of it being to your Facebook community, is a link to HoneyBook scheduling tool, and you make this font huge and tell them to book a call with you. Okay, we've got so many options of how we can customize this file. So just don't be shy to think creatively about that. But the reason that we're stopped at this stop, so we did project types, we did contact form, and now we're talking about how to build out the templates and where you should be focusing your energy there. This might take some time, right? Especially if you're going to be going out to Canva and building some beautiful graphics to put into this document. But once you get this content built out, it's worth it, because then you can start to automate that process. I'm talking too fast, you guys. Just give me a second here. Then you can go on to automate that process, right? So once you've got the content built out, then you can tell HoneyBook when you want those things to happen and who you want them to happen with. Okay? Let's keep going. So you can incorporate brochures. You can incorporate questionnaires. Questionnaires are really straightforward. You can see there's not as many branding elements. It's a little bit more of like an old school HoneyBook file. So, you kind of pick the format of the question that you'd like to ask and then type it in, or have like static text that you can add or include more project information. Honestly, I think if I was you guys, I would focus my energy in the brochure file, just because it is more customizable in terms of the different tools that you're able to combine, from service selection to asking questions to the branding elements to being able to break things down in those pages on the left-hand side. So it's really easy for your clients to navigate. It's just up to you. If you're very comfortable with the questionnaire file and that's what you've always used, there's no harm, no foul there. You can definitely continue to use a questionnaire, but the brochure does the same thing and more. So maybe focus your energy. If you're going to build something new out, maybe focus your energy in doing that in a brochure file, just to give your clients a kind of even more elevated client experience on that side. Okay. And then the last bit here. So once you get your questionnaires and brochures built out based off of whatever situation you might want to be communicating with your clients in. So I'm going to tell you right now, more than likely, there is going to be some back and forth at this point, because the triggers in the workflow, so when things can happen, when things can be automatically sent, or when things can be queued up to be sent out to your clients, will probably inform what content you build out here. So there's probably going to be some back and forth at this point. I know I was saying you want to do as much ahead of time so that by the time you get to the workflows tool, you're not constantly having to go back and forth. But you inevitably, at least for the first time you're setting up a workflow, will need to kind of go back and forth a couple of times, because, maybe in your head you're thinking, I want them to receive a thank you email the day that they schedule an appointment with me. Well, that's not a trigger in HoneyBook workflows. Rather, what you would do is you would say, I know all my clients, schedule a week after they pay roughly. So I'm actually going to leave that as a step that's approved before sending. And, maybe it's the same content, but I just want to make sure. So there might still be some back and forth that needs to happen, and that's totally normal and totally fine. So if you feel yourself doing that, don't be like, Mac told me that, I wasn't supposed to have to go back and forth. I'm doing something wrong. That's not the case. It's perfectly normal to have to go back and forth a little bit while you're setting up this tool, especially the first time around. So I also just realized I didn't even introduce myself to you guys. So my name's Mac. I'm part of our product education team. I'm really happy that you guys are here. Yolanda's cracking me up. Great. Okay. So the other thing I want to say, questionnaires and brochures, when you send them in HoneyBook, hopefully you guys know this, they always come with an email, right? So they're almost coming as like an attachment inside of the email. It has a little button on your client side. They'll get the email template saying whatever you'd like it to say. And then there's a button that says view brochure or view questionnaire, whatever file type it is. So this is to say that when you go to build out a workflow and you plan to send a brochure or a questionnaire, you need to have an email template that you plan to have go along with that. Okay. So every time you build out a questionnaire or a brochure, get that content looking good, then you're going into emails and you're going to create emails for each one. So you guys remember in my brochures section, I was showing you I had module 1, 2, and 3. I've got an email for each of those 2 because each of those brochures is going to come attached, HoneyBook attached to one of these emails. So for the example that I gave last week in our, selling products in HoneyBook kind of workflow brochure tie-in webinar, this is very hands-off. I'm just basically giving, I'm excited that they're part of our program and I'm putting the workbook in front of them using that brochure file. So maybe if this is your welcome packet or your welcome guide for your clients, you've built out the welcome guide, built out the welcome packet or the pricing guide or whatever it is. And then you've got your new inquiry email that you want to attach to it because they're reaching out, they submit the contact form, they say they're the logo design client, and then you've got the logo design brochure. Now you need to have your new inquiry logo design email where you say, thanks so much for reaching out. I'm really looking forward to working with you. At the file below, you'll be able to do X, Y, and Z. Let me know if you have any questions, right? So you want to kind of set the expectations and give that really warm welcome to them if this is in a situation where it's a new inquiry that you're communicating with. Okay, so that's just one example. But for every single questionnaire and brochure file, you're also going to want to have an email. So this is what I'm saying. This is the most time-consuming part because you're building out all the content that you're then going to go into workflows and automate. So we are at that step, y'all. Let's keep going. We've got 9 minutes until I go to questions. So feel free to pop your questions in there. I'm going to post the notes that I promised y'all at the bottom of the page there. And I am also posting a poll on what you thought of today's webinar. So feel free to check out the notes or open the notes. They're just in a view only mode, but you can make a copy or print them or download them as well. And then feel free to take the poll and let us know what you thought of today's education, if you would recommend it to a friend who uses HoneyBook as well, just so we know that you like this kind of content. So now we're on the workflows page. Okay, we've done all the pre-work. We set up our project types. We set up our contact form. We attach the project types to the contact form. Now we're here on the workflows page. The reason that I had us start with project types and contact form is because, that doesn't look good. I highlighted too much. Is because you can automate with the contact form. So this is what I've been saying, right? If your client fills out the form and you want them to receive a certain series of steps or communication from you, you'll want to make sure that the project types and contact forms are set up appropriately. So when you go, so let's say you've got people reaching out for branding kits and you want them to go through a 4-step series. Well, first off, you can say, hey, everyone who fills out the contact form and says that they're a branding kit client, I want them to receive this set of steps. Okay, so this is why setting up your project types first is so important. So another example, like what we're talking about with this online course situation, maybe you've got that specific contact form where project type is assigned to say online course. So they don't even have to select that they're an online course client. You don't even want to give them the chance to say anything else, because if they're filling out that contact form, you know they're an online course client. And then you're going to put them in this 5-step process, which includes all those modules that we were just looking at. Okay, so now I'm actually inside of a workflow. This is what it'll look like once you're actually setting it up. I know it seems crazy that we just spent, 30 minutes going through all of the pre-work that needs to go into this. But once you do all that stuff, that's just to show you that by the time you get here, this shouldn't be that hard because all the pre-work is already done. Okay, so we can click into any of these steps and check out the triggers. And I want to just explain what goes into a step in a workflow. Okay, so like I mentioned, there are 4 actions that you can take in a workflow. You can set an internal task, you can send an email, you can send a questionnaire, and you can send a brochure file. Okay, those 4 things are here on the screen. We can do any of those. When we select email, it gives us the list of email templates to choose from. So this is why, and again, you'll notice just like when you go to pull in any template in HoneyBook, we can't see the content. We can only see the title. So please, pro tip, give yourself a good title for what you're building out, whether it be a brochure file, a questionnaire file, an email template. Give yourselves a good title. That's why I made it module 1, 2, and 3. So it was really easy for me to know, yep, I just wrote that email template. I know for sure that's a good one to send. Welcome, maybe not as specific. Maybe you've got 4 different welcome emails depending on who the client is and what they're receiving from you. So maybe this should say, welcome branding, welcome logo, welcome online course. And each of those is a different email template that I send depending on the situation. Okay, so I kind of did myself a disservice by only saying welcome because maybe there's a specific use case for each of those. But so I'm going to pull my welcome email template in here, and I'm going to say this goes out 0 days after the first payment is made. So even though I attached this workflow to the contact form for my online course clients, I don't want them to receive anything until they've paid the invoice through HoneyBook, because maybe they're inquiring about it, but they never end up paying. So I don't want them to start receiving the online course before they paid for it. So I set this up to say after first payment is made, I want the welcome email to be sent automatically, almost as like a thank you for submitting your payment. Welcome to the online course program. Tons of different ways we can go about doing this. Maybe you want this first step to actually be 0 days after activating workflow, which would be the step that you want to do. So if you guys are here today trying to figure out how to send an email as soon as someone inquires, this is what you want your trigger to look like. 0 days after activating workflow, and then assign the contact form or the project type on the previous page we were just on. And that will make sure everyone who fills out the contact form or everyone who indicates their specific project type will get that email that same day. Okay, so you can even say 0, you could say like, I want them to get it 20 minutes after activating the workflow. And that would mean they fill out the contact form, 20 minutes later, they get a thank you email from me. So maybe that makes it feel a little bit more organic and not as robotic for you. We want you to have control again over when these things happen. The final piece here is deciding the approval settings that you want this message to have. So I teased to this a little earlier when I said with workflows, you always have the option to send automatically or approve before sending. Okay, so in each action, you've got 4 different actions you can take. Then you'll choose your template. Then you'll choose when the template goes out based off of the triggers that are available. So this is what I was saying would inform the type of content that you create potentially. So based off of your options here, you know, maybe you want to kick it off after their initial questionnaire is submitted or something like that. You can control these triggers and when these things happen. So if you want to say after project date, before project date, any of these options are available to you. So maybe one of your steps is sending a brochure. So you want the next step to be after brochure is submitted. So you can think really creatively here about how you want to break these steps down, but it ultimately is really going to be up to what makes the most sense for your specific business model. I think the most important thing to know is that if you do 0 days after activating workflow, that basically means send it as soon as possible. Don't wait for them to submit payment. Don't wait for them to submit a brochure, anything like that. Send it right away. As soon as they fill out the contact form, as soon as I apply it to their project, whatever, just send it as soon as possible is basically the other way of saying that. Okay, so if that's how you want it to work, the first step I would say oftentimes is, you know, at 0 whatever after activating workflow, because people do want that first step to trigger ASAP. Okay, but back to the approval settings. You can send automatically or you can approve before sending. So I recommend, just as you're starting out, I'm just going to put it out there for you guys to make the decision. If you're still feeling hesitant about, does automating even make sense for my business? How do I know I'm the right candidate for automating my process? Or if you're feeling like that's giving up too much control, or your clients are going to lose the personal interaction with you and you love really building relationships with your clients and you don't want to risk that, let me say this. I recommend setting all of your steps. So build out a workflow. Leave here today, take the, information I've given, take the notes down at the bottom of the page, just open that tab now so that you have it when you go to build this later. You can bookmark that, whatever you need to do. I'll send it in my email also, but I'm going to recommend build out a workflow and set every single step, even the first one, every single step to approve before sending. Okay, so rather than send automatically, set every single step to approve before sending. And let me tell you what this is going to do. It will not send automatically, so you can have peace of mind that your clients will never receive something that you didn't intend for them to receive. You get complete control here. Approve before sending means it'll queue it up and remind you that you had set the intention to send this message or this file at this time to this client. And you can gut check, you can check your work basically. So the first time you're doing this, if you want to set every single thing to approve before sending, it's almost like testing your own intuition. Can I truly automate this part of my process? Can I truly automate this flow of communication the way that I want to? And if you find that you're editing the language before you send it out. So let me pause for a second. Approve before sending means it'll queue it up and allow you to edit it before you send it, skip the step altogether, remove the workflow so you can edit the email that's going to go out to them before you send it. So it basically, you can skip the step, edit the step, or remove the workflow altogether if you decide, this doesn't even make sense for this client anymore. So it still gives you complete control there. So I would recommend setting every single step to approve before sending, just as a good peace of mind method for yourself to know that you truly can automate those steps of your business. And if you find you're editing it, the messages every time before you send it out, that's probably a good indication that your template needs to be updated, or maybe the cadence that you decided needs to be updated and to a week earlier, or a couple days earlier, or a couple days later. So it just gives you that control to make sure that you truly can automate those steps. So that's my recommendation, is to set majority of the steps to approve before sending and just try it out with a couple clients. That's kind of my advice there. I know we're at time to start taking questions, so feel free to start putting your questions in. I'm just going to dive into questions because that was really everything. We went through all the steps. Okay, so we did project types, we did contact form, we did building out all the content in the templates, so your file types and your email templates. We built out a workflow, so understanding the triggers and the timing and the cadence and the approvals here, and attaching the content from the previous step into these actions. And then we went through attaching the workflow from the contact form. So you can attach the contact form or attach the workflow based off of the contact form, based off of project type, or you can say, hey, it doesn't matter. Project types don't matter to me. I didn't even want to include that question on my contact form. That's totally fine. You just say, everybody who fills out my contact form in general, I want them to go through this flow of communication. There is one final way you can attach a workflow, and that's the manual option. So you'll see these two are not assigned. Maybe these workflows are ones that I like to manually apply. So I don't like to say, based off of project type or contact form or anything like that. I like to wait until I have had some kind of communication with the client that indicates to me that they need to be added to this workflow. I come into the project and I add the workflow down here. Okay, so you can always manually add a workflow as well. That's kind of the final option. I think most people lean away from that because obviously it's adding a manual step into an automatic tool. So that's just the final option, but highly recommend using contact form and project types, because those triggers, again, you can say, hey, assign the workflow as soon as they fill out the contact form, but don't send them anything until they submit payment. You can totally do that. That way you don't have to go through this extra step of attaching the workflow later on. Okay, I'm going to start out in the question section, reading through some of these. I know some came in a couple days ago. I think so. Sophia asked this, what are the best ways to lead people into HoneyBook and what are the best workflows to seamlessly streamline your clients? I wish I had like a catch-all answer for the best workflow to streamline your client's process. I would say the best way to lead people into HoneyBook is obviously through the contact form and including those project type questions. We learned that today. I know this question came in a couple of days ago. And then the best workflow to seamlessly streamline, it really depends on your process. I kind of as a standard see like a welcome guide go out using that brochure file, maybe 2 follow-up emails automatically sent after that to make sure the client's not ghosting you, maybe an internal task to archive the client if they haven't gotten back to you. That would be kind of like a standard initial follow-up process to implement with your clients. And you could have those for all the different project types that you offer. So you could say, you know, my logo clients, I have my logo brochure, my whatever web clients, I have my web brochure, and all of those have their own kind of unique workflow series. And maybe all the emails for those are the same, but the brochure files, because the service selections are different, It really depends on your process, Sophia. I wish I had a good kind of, you know, broad brush answer for that, but it really just depends on the client journey that you choose to create for your clients and your business model. I've been using HoneyBook for a few months and don't understand the best way to set up the workflow. I need to be certain I am making the most of my membership. Hopefully we answered that one for you, Robin. I know that came in a couple of days ago as well. How can I best utilize the customer portal with my clients? And once they set up a login, how do they get back in? Great question, Paige. So if you guys don't know what Paige is talking about, over in your company settings, you have the ability to create a custom client portal for your clients. So you can have a login page basically for them where they can access their version of HoneyBook. So their version of HoneyBook, meaning their project workspace that you've created for them, where they see all of your communication back and forth. They can access their upcoming payments. They can access any of the HoneyBook dynamic files you've shared with them. So they get a really similar view to the project workspace that you see, but there are some limitations, like the right-hand menu that says only visible to you, they can't see, and things like that. And they can only see the details page where you've actually entered information. So anything you leave blank won't show on their side. But they get back in. So they create a login to get access to their client portal. You can customize what it looks like. And then to get back in, they would just, you know, bookmark the page or any other way that you would remember a website. So yeah, hopefully that answers that question for you, Paige. Terry says, I'm having trouble setting up my invoice with weekly auto payments. So Terry, this one, just because it's a little off topic, I'm going to save it and chat in the response afterwards and just keep moving on to more specific workflow ones, but I will answer that. I'm just going to chat it in once we're at time. Hillary says, can they choose multiple answers from the drop-down list in the contact form? Hillary, I'm really glad that you asked this. That is a really good point I should have brought up. No, they cannot. So that's why sometimes project types don't work for certain businesses, because you'll want them to be able to select multiple different offerings or multiple different services they're interested in. And that is not currently a function of the project type drop-down, which is why it can make more sense to just assign the project type based off of the contact form that they're filling out, or to say everyone who fills out the contact form, I want them to go through this kind of general sequence of communication. Or maybe you don't have it automated based off the contact form. You wait till you have an initial consultation call with them. And then based off of that, you apply the workflow based off the services that they've let you know they're interested in, or something like that. So it just, again, depends on your process. Of course, you can have control where you'd like to. You can automate from the very beginning when the contact form is submitted, or you can wait until you've had a consult call or something like that and manually apply the workflow at that point so that all those steps going forward are automated. It's really up to you there, but that's a really good question. When will we get a copy of this webinar emailed us? So I'm going to email it to you guys within 30 minutes of us wrapping up here. The notes, again, are at the bottom of the screen, so feel free to click on those. I'll kind of reiterate it and expand on it a little bit in my email that I'll be sending out. I'll send the link to the recording, and the link to the recording will be on our YouTube channel along with all the other webinars that we do. So feel free to check that out too. Our workflow is something that can be done only on the desktop. I believe so, just because they're so intense. I think the loading time on mobile is like compromised when you try to do this. So I think, yeah, desktop, I'm almost positive is the main place where you would be setting up a workflow. Good question. How do I attach 2 brochures in one email? Maria wants to know. Good question. You can't actually. So if that was the case, you might want to have a brochure where you have combined services or combined offerings to a client. I understand the use case is like a client is maybe interested in, for example, your online course and something else, and you want to send them both brochures so they can have the option to service select. What I would do is keep the information general enough so that you can just pull in the couple different packages for those different offerings and then just have one kind of more customized brochure for your clients to look through. If that's the case for your business model, you might be someone who doesn't want to automate that step because everyone's going to have a different intrigue or a different interest level for their packages. So maybe you just automate the first step where you thank them for reaching out, set up a consult call, get a feel for what packages or services they're interested in, and then kind of customize a brochure for them rather than automating that step. Like it sounds like, Maria, that step is part of your process where you need to have more input and you can't automate it to me just because every client is going to be different. So that would be an example of maybe where you would set an internal task for yourself to send customized brochure or something like that. Okay, thank you guys for being here. Thank you all for voting on this topic. I hope that it was really helpful and that you guys were able to learn and feel confident building out a workflow. Let me know like the biggest aha moment that you had from today's webinar too. If you have time, just pop that in the chat for me. I'd love to know a little bit more. Awesome, guys. Well, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your Wednesday.